The most prolific serial murderer America has ever known.
The one thing that I want you to know, I was that daughter at home, waiting for my mom to come home.
Whose 19-year reign of terror left the area surrounding Seattle littered with corpses.
He was, ahead of us. We wanted to catch him. We wanted to stop him.
But who was the Green River Killer? And was he born to kill?
If you did not know what he had done, you would like him.
When he went through the door and left to go to work, he wasn't the man that I knew.
Highway 99, adjacent to Seattle's SeaTac Airport, 30 years ago, a notorious spot.
This area, back in the early 80s, had a very transient population. There were topless bars over here. There were a lot of hotels where you could rent rooms for an hour or two.
Faye Brooks, then a detective assigned to sex crime cases, was regularly called to the street known simply as the Strip.
There were a lot of young women who were working the streets.
All the girls were young, and some of them had troubled pasts, but all of them are somebody's daughter and somebody's sister.
A lot of the young girls had grown up in abusive homes, and that was why they were running away. And I could relate to that. I'm a survivor of child sex abuse, and there but for the grace of God were I, and so I could certainly empathize with them, and I also wanted to help them.
One such woman was Marcia Chapman, a prostitute who claimed to have been raped.
And the apartment building where she lived was right here.
Marcia was a beautiful, statuesque black woman. She was 31. She had 3 children. She couldn't support them on the job she could get, and she was working as a prostitute.
She was living in an apartment that was sparsely furnished, so I think she was like down on her luck. She seemed to have a kind heart and was a nice person, but under the circumstances, she did what she had to do to make ends meet.
Marcia's alleged rape was typical of the hazards that girls on the Strip faced. At the time, best-selling crime writer Ann Rule lived just blocks from the area.
I would sometimes stop and warn them and say, do you know what I do for a living? I write about murder. And you don't have a chance out here. How do you know who you're getting in with? And usually they would just shrug and walk away.
In 1982, the danger would be brought home by a discovery in the nearby Green River.
There was a man on the water in a boat, and he saw underneath the water what he thought was a mannequin. It wasn't a mannequin, it was a human being, and there were 2 of them there. Well, one of the victims in the water, her hand was just waving with the current of the water. And it was like, here I am, please help me. But of course, it was too late.
As police investigated the crime scene, they made another grim find.
Processing the scene where the victims were in the water was where we found the 3rd victim on the banks.
They were all within a few feet of each other, and so clearly, the same killer had put all 3 of the bodies there.
All 3 women had been picked up from around the Strip by what the FBI dubbed an organized serial killer.
The organized offender was more planned, more premeditated, was able to conceptualize crimes and carry them out very efficiently, namely because of the fact that they had very little feeling for another human being. They looked at a victim as an object for their excitement. Basically, you're talking about a sexual psychopath.
The victims were 16-year-old Opal Mills, 17-year-old Cynthia Jean Hines, and 31-year-old Marcia Chapman.
When I found out that it was Marcia, I don't think I had any words that I could say. It was like, oh my God, somebody killed her. It was really sad.
We did not know this was only the beginning of a reign of terror, and we wouldn't know who was doing this for a very long time.
By the fall of 1982, the bodies of 5 young women had disappeared from the Strip and were discovered near the river. And Seattle's Green River Killer had only just begun. On Seattle's Strip, the Green River Killer had found a rich hunting ground that would enable him to amass a body count unrivaled by any serial killer in American history. On September 15th, 1982, 18-year-old Mary Bridget Meehan vanishes.
She left. I think she was still possibly turning a few tricks, and she didn't come back. Her family was so upset because she was 8.5 months pregnant.
This was the area that I was working in. This is the area where the bulk of the Green River victims were picked up from. And we would sit here and look, you know, trying to identify who might be the suspect. We had very dedicated detectives who were determined to solve this case.
On September 26th, 16-year-old Linda Jane Rule vanishes.
Linda Rule was a slender blonde girl who lived up in the North End. She had been working the streets, and she had a boyfriend who kind of served as a pimp. She disappeared from an area near the Northgate Mall. Like all serial killers, he seemed to have the ability to sense vulnerability in potential victims. He didn't take the streetwise girls. He was looking for the younger women.
By the end of 1982, 15 girls would be missing or found dead, and pressure was mounting on the sheriff's task force.
People hoped that law enforcement would be successful. There were different rumors that were passing around of who the person might be. There was rampant speculation that it might be even a law enforcement officer because of the easy access that the individual had to the number and variety of women in the community.
You know, the unfortunate thing is some of the women of the street felt like the sheriff's office wasn't investigating the case as hard as we could have because they were street kids and runaways, and that's not true. Everybody assigned to that investigation was committed to solving it, committed to bringing this person to justice, because these were, you know, somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's mother, and we cared about them. We cared about them like they were our own kids or our own family members, and we wanted to solve it.
Then, on April 30th, 1983, a young girl was spotted being taken from the Strip.
Maria Malvar, with her boyfriend, were at a restaurant on the highway. Her boyfriend went to make a phone call. When he came back, Maria wasn't in the restaurant. And he was very concerned, and he thought, well, I'll go out on the highway and see if I can find her. And he realized that Maria was in the truck ahead of him. There was a man driving, and then she was talking to the man. And so he determined to follow the truck because he wasn't sure what was going on. He worried about her. And they got up to the stoplight at Highway 99 and 216th. But when he turned left, he couldn't see the car.
Marie's boyfriend returned with her family to search the streets for the pickup truck she'd left in. And in a quiet cul-de-sac just a few blocks from the strip, they found it, parked outside the modest home of a local truck painter.
And they asked local police, please, to go there because they believed Maria was in that house. One of the sergeants did go there, knocked on the door, a man answered, and he said, there's nobody here but me. And they didn't press it.
All serial killers have the ability to appear so normal that they throw off even people who are considered experts. The serial killer is the Olympiad of the pathological liar.
Details of the truck painter were added to the hundreds of tips and names in the task force files. And still, girls continued to vanish.
And the list kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
By June 1983, at least 26 girls had disappeared.
They learn from their crimes. As their murders grow in number, their efficiency increases.
The remains were being found in secluded, quiet, dark areas.
That summer, 5 girls went missing.
By the time they're up to 5 or 6 or 10 homicides, they become very difficult to catch.
The fear was tremendous and deep throughout the entire community.
By the fall, 5 more vanished.
Some of them were in the mountain foothills, some of them were down in the Green River Valley.
He was, ahead of us. We wanted to catch him. We wanted to stop him.
Winter and spring 1984, 4 more girls gone.
There would be 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 in one spot.
Unbelievable.
He was outsmarting the homicide detectives. Everybody was looking for him.
He was dumping women like they were garbage. This was a dump site. It's not far from the airport. It's not far from the strip where the young girls were missing. In the evenings, it was dark, very secluded. Very few people came down here. You could come, dump something, and be gone. And that's what happened in this location here. They were just dumped.
Among the dozens of bodies found was 16-year-old Linda Jane Rule, her skeletal remains hidden under a bush. And in the scrubland south of the airport, the fate of the pregnant 18-year-old Mary Bridget Meehan was finally discovered. By spring 1984, the killer had amassed more than 40 victims, but then something changed.
The killings appeared to have stopped. Many thought that he was gone.
It's incredibly unusual for a serial killer simply to stop killing. A serial killer will usually only cease murder when he's apprehended or when he dies himself.
In 1985, the truck painter from the house in the quiet cul-de-sac began dating 40-year-old divorced mother Judith.
When I first met him, I thought he was quite the gentleman and so polite and nice. He loved the country music and the dancing. And he was always smiling. He never got angry. And I just thought he was the greatest. It was like